Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to TED Talks Ball. Super excited. We've got a Wednesday afternoon edition. I've got Steph Sanchez in the house. You may know her obviously on Twitter as at Steph49K, and then 49 Carats podcast on YouTube as well. Steph, got to have the pleasure of meeting Steph at training camp recently. It was a lot of fun. In fact, the person who Matt Melman, who got you tickets to Friday or Saturday, got me tickets to ticket to Monday. So amazing! It was so hard to get tickets to that thing. So thanks to everybody who helped me to get to all 9 days that were open for training camp. Amazing. But Steph, tell everybody what you got going on coming up. Anything I may have missed. Anything that you want to promote like that.
Nothing really. I mean, just getting ready for the season. We finally have real football games to talk about, so I'm definitely excited about that and getting the weekly shows going once again. So, yeah, I'm ready for it.
Nice. That's outstanding. And obviously, we just had the Raiders and 49ers preseason game on Sunday. Probably not everything a lot of us had hoped as far as, what we wanted to see out of Trey Lance. But we'll get to that. I think at first what we should probably do is take a look at, the folks here in the audience. So I'm just doing one last retweet here. I think I'm good now. Let's see who's here and say hi to everybody who wrote first and sort of let the juices get flowing a little. Jimmy Perez in the house. He came in early, said, "What's up, Steph and Ted? Faithful." We got Randy Daytona. He says, "You got that right. There was no competition for Brock." Yeah, I've been having some somewhat controversial titles. I gotta have to look and see what I put for this one. I said, "Propped up Purdy, gifted 49er starting job despite zero competition." So maybe a little controversial, but true. It's certainly not a lie. Anything I said there. Well, maybe the propped up part. That's the part people might have issue with. But that's my opinion, and I have strong opinions, and I'm not afraid to state them. And Steph maybe will shoot me down, or maybe the audience will, and that's fine. I'm not here. I don't want to, echo chamber. I don't want people to be like, "Ted, you're great." If you disagree, let me know. It's fine. Just try and be respectful is all I ask. Don't kill me completely. Jimmy Perez is back now, real time, saying what's up. Randy said, "Ignore the question marks." So just saying you got that right. We've got bomb Calk, same. This is from your channel, Steph. I'm not said boring. Sorry, man. I apologize. I'll try and get this going here as soon as I can. And Randy says, Ted and Steph, firecrackers, like that. And they say Raiders and Ravens reign supreme in the preseason. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you saw, Steph, but one of my titles from this week was Raiders win their Super Bowl. Yesterday. That was on Monday. Because,
they're definitely happy about winning the game and doing well in practice, but
yeah, I mean,
like
it's a big.
Their Super Bowl.
It is. They're not gonna beat any teams like us in the regular season. So, congrats, Raiders! Yay, you did it! But don't break your arm like patting yourself on the back. I'd say so. Joe Stevens in the house. He's a really cool Seahawks fan. There are about two or three of them. Seahawks Eddie, and there's one more. I'm blanking on his name, but hopefully they'll show up. Ted Rants Ball. I might have to change the title of the show because also I was told that the TED Talks. If you don't remember the ball part, you'll never find my shows if you type in TED Talks because all the TEDx stuff takes over. So. But Steph, I'd love to get your thoughts on what you saw in camp with me and also what we've been hearing from the joint practices with the Raiders, and then obviously what we saw in the game, and then what we're hearing and sort of seeing since.
Yeah, I mean that's a lot, but what we saw in camp, I mean, was pretty much status quo, guys getting ready for the year. I think as far as the standouts go, Javon Kinlaw was definitely someone who stood out in camp, but in the preseason game, maybe not so much. He was getting pushed around quite a bit and not getting any type of penetration at all in the interior. So that was a bit disappointing. and a stark difference, like I said, from camp. So I want to see something in the second preseason game if he can make something happen, if he can make a play, because if not, it honestly didn't even make sense from what he was doing in camp to what we saw. Um, and I mean, I think there's a few guys that have been, you know, coming along as they've gotten more reps with the team. Newcomers, I'd say, Clinton Farrell. We saw him get that sack in the preseason game, and I thought he was having kind of a slow start to camp, but I think as time went on, he was making plays, especially in 11 on 11s. So I think he's definitely someone who's going to contribute, you know, fairly early, especially. I'm not sure how long Drake Jackson's going to be out with his injury. Hopefully he'll be available for week one. But I think Clinton Farrell probably pushing for that spot opposite Nick Bosa, right? So looking forward to seeing what he does. And then, I mean, Brandon Ayuk was just cooking guys left and right all throughout camp. We have yet to see him in the preseason, of course. Not sure if he'll play in the second preseason game, but I would love to see what he can do this year because I think we all have very high expectations for him. And yeah, I mean, I think as far as camp went, it was a pretty great experience. Now, the practices against the Raiders seem to have been not so great, and I would still just tell people not to worry too much about that, just because I mean it is still the preseason. Guys are still getting, you know, acclimated to that ramp up to the real thing, and it seems like the Raiders and Josh McDaniels, I think they're making an emphasis to really, you know, go 100% at this point so that when the season gets going, they're ready to go. And I heard rumors that they were game planning for the game, the preseason game that these two teams had, and also
Who
um,
does that? Who does that?
probably a bit of, you know, planning even in the practices, right? Because in order to game plan for the game, you're implementing some of that in the practices. So I think that's partially maybe some of the reason that we saw the Raiders have such success against the 49ers, both in those two joint practices and in the game. I mean, certainly as a 49ers fan, it's not something that you want to see, but you know, let's just see what happens in these next couple preseason games. I think, you know, Kyle and Steve Wilkes certainly don't want to see more of those types of performances as the preseason gets going.
Yeah, Randy says Sam's starting Saturday, but it looks like a little like, do we think he's starting Saturday? Um, I would imagine
He
that.
is. So
Oh, he is.
Kyle did speak with the media after today's practice, and
Ah,
he is going to get the start. He's going to get I think it's the first half, or I don't know. I just know he's going to start, and then um, Trey will play after that. So
woo, there go my mentions. I served up a lot of receipts with Trey Lance getting the start in the first game, so I would expect, they say turnabout is fair play. I would expect a lot of return fire on that on my timeline, and that's fine. If I'm going to dish it out, I got to be able to take it. What else we got here? Jedi's saying the D line was so unimpressive. It was hard to get hype for Clelin Ferrell's sack. Do it again, sir. I mean, I just think, anybody struggling in that game on our defense, just remember there's no Hargrave, there's no Armstead, there's no I mean, obviously no Bosa because he's not signed yet. There's no Dre, no Fred, no Lenore, no Charvarius, no Huff, no Gibson. So, like, I kind of give a little bit of a pass to Kinlaw and to Isaiah Oliver because I think they're both going to look a lot better when they have some more quality pieces around them. Just like I think Lance would have looked better with some real weapons and an actual O line that could pass block. And more importantly, if Kyle had called some damn run plays in the first three series, and then he finally calls two to start the fourth series, and what do you know? Lance gets in rhythm and we score a TD. I mean, obviously it was lucky TD, but it was a nice little drive. We got a little momentum, something to build off of. So anyway, that's my start of a rant. But real quick, there was something further back I just wanted to bring up. Ted doing a show with Nick Bosa. Nick, how's the contract extension going? I think Steph doesn't do impersonations on the fly. I think she likes to get prepared for those. But it was funny.
yeah, I don't know anything about the contract. I mean, I wish I did, but I mean, I'm not worried about it though. I'll tell you that. I think this deal is going to get done. It's going to be massive, and because it's going to be so massive, I think they got to work out those details, and it will maybe come close to the beginning of the season, week 1, but I think they get it done before that.
And then, and Jed's already planning ahead. He got that 1.4 extra million with his insider trading to help pay the bonus. So, good thinking, Jed. Way to plan ahead on that. So yeah, I mean, as far as D line was unimpressive, the O line was unimpressive. We were unimpressive in the trenches. I mean, Trey was there were only 5 quarterbacks out of the 75 that played in this first round of preseason games that had a higher pressure rate than Trey Lance did. So just really disheartening to me that you would, on a run first team, go out there and make him throw 20 times and only have 8 runs. I've been saying Kyle sabotaged him. I mean, it's either that to me or Kyle was inept. So, I mean, it's like, take your pick. But I'm not happy with Kyle and the way he's treated Trey Lance. I think it should have been a competition. And people will say, like, look at that game as evidence. But I mean, I think if we look at Trey Lance by the end of these preseason games, we'll be seeing a different picture than what we saw Sunday in his first game back after 11 months of not playing tackle football. Keep in mind, folks, Brock Purdy hasn't been tackled yet either. So, and he has not looked good in camp. And I don't know, what do you think about Steph? There's a lot of arguments going on about interceptions in camp. Do they matter or do they not matter? What's your view on that?
I think it all depends on the player and how they make practice work for them. I mean, I think Brock is the type of quarterback, based on what I saw last camp. I didn't think he looked good in last year's camp. I thought he threw a lot of interceptions in camp, but look what he did in games. I think he's the type of guy who is going to take some risks, gonna see what he can get away with. And I think that's something that Kyle Shanahan saw when he first saw Brock in camp. And that's why we heard that Kyle Shanahan came away impressed with Brock in camp, despite the interceptions, right? And we hear so much about Kyle Shanahan saying he was glad that X guy let it rip. He's using that term a lot, or that phrase, let it rip. And he was asked actually about Brock and the interceptions, I think, today. And he used that same phrase. So I think for how the 49ers evaluate the position, they do want to see guys take those risks and let it rip, right? And you live with the results. So I think it's always process over results for Kyle Shanahan and how he evaluates the position. And so I'm not getting worried about the interceptions in camp, because based on what I saw from Brock Purdy in games, I don't think it's going to be an issue. It could be, but I don't think it will be, because he's throwing them in camp.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. I mean, I've been talking about Purdy not being himself. I've been saying hasn't been his 2020 self. But that's not just sacks, right? I mean, because there's not just interceptions. It's the sacks too. And honestly, in the 9 practice I went to, I can't recall him throwing one good deep ball the entire time. They were all either overthrown or underthrown. So it sounded like he got a good deep ball on Tuesday and a nice completion. So that's good. But still had the pick 6. The way I classify these picks, or any one of these types of, stats or whatever in camp, it's sort of like QB wins. They're not everything, and they're not nothing either. There's a little something to it. People like to throw out the Jimmy G thing and say, well, Jimmy had the 5 interceptions and we went to the Super Bowl. I'm like, well, yeah, but in the last 6 quarters leading up to the Super Bowl, Kyle only let Jimmy throw the ball 12 times. That's only 2 times a quarter throwing the ball. And that's because he threw interception to Kendricks for the Vikings in the first half. And he threw it 2 more times to Kendricks and he dropped 2 of them. So it could have been 3 picks by Kendricks easily in that divisional round. It might have been the difference in the game. So Kyle put him on ice essentially until the Super Bowl. And then we get to the Super Bowl. Jimmy does well in the first half, and other than a pick, that kind of eyes closed pick that's very famous. And you could argue that he underthrew Kittle when Kittle pushed off. Like, I don't know that Kittle has to push off if it's a more perfect ball. But the big thing was the 2 interceptions that Jimmy threw, and then he obviously overthrew Emmanuel Sanders, and we lost the Super Bowl. I'm not going to blame it all on Jimmy. because Kyle deserves blame, the ref deserves blame, the defense got tired. Part of that was from not moving the ball. Anyway, bottom line is, I think to laugh off the 5 interceptions by Jimmy and say, well, we got to the Super Bowl. This is a Super Bowl squad. I think we need to win a Super Bowl before we say they don't matter, to me.
Yeah, I mean,
Completely.
again, like if Brock becomes an interception prone quarterback in actual games, I think that's when we start to worry, because I think we've seen Jimmy Garoppolo be that guy, right? But they're different quarterbacks, and just yeah, I think the comparison, it maybe is a little silly to make at this point, because now we've seen Brock throw interceptions, and I don't know, at this point it's been one in each practice, maybe in the last week or so. But again, just because based on what he's done in games, that's the reason that I'm not really worried about it, more so than, the Jimmy comparison.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. I trust Brock more, at least a little bit. Somebody brought up, this is an interesting one, and it sort of brings up a good point that I've been asking people, like, do you have a walkaway number for Bosa? Like, is 40 million too much? If he's like, hey, I want, or whatever the guaranteed number is, whatever the sticking point is. I mean, I feel like everyone has to have a point. So I'd say, what is yours? Or do you just feel like no matter what the number, even if he wants 50 million, we pay it just because it's Bosa?
I mean, I think he's gonna push for over what Aaron Donald got, right, in his contract, and so um,
Absolutely.
I think he probably deserves to be in that conversation. I mean, that deal happened a year or two ago at this point, so I think for Nick Bosa to want to get over that is probably warranted, and I'd be fine with that, just because based on what he's been able to do since he's been in the league, I think he deserves it, right? And every player, every year that it's their turn to get a contract, they're always going to want more than the guy before them, right? So I think that would probably be my ceiling for Nick Bosa. Hopefully, he doesn't want too much more than that, though.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Like, you start getting over 35, I start to get a little squirmy. 40, I think, is a definite no. I mean, I think you can't pay a defensive end quarterback money unless he's just that much better than everyone else. And honestly, I think he's kind of, I mean, we think he's the best, but I don't think it's a big jump from like him, Myles Garrett to TJ Watt. Micah, I don't think we can quite compare because he hasn't been a dedicated edge, but as an overall defensive player, Micah's probably right in there with those 3 as the top 4 players in my mind in the NFL on defense.
He's getting a lot more than Bosa, so
Yeah. And then just to rip off from your video where you're just like, well, as long as it's more than Joey, right?
That's the floor.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah,
floor of this deal, I think.
yeah. You got to get over
Definitely.
Joey and hopefully get over AD to really make it happen. Um, Randy says Jimmy 39-18. Yeah, he had a good record, no doubt about it. But he also had a really good defense, a really good run game. Kyle calling the plays. This last year, the best group of weapons in football. So like QB wins again. That's why they don't mean everything, because you can get carried if you're on a really exceptional team, or if you're amazing, you can carry a lesser team. You can elevate your team to be better than it is. I think we see that maybe with Josh Allen some, because he's got Stephon Diggs, but not exactly all-star roster of weapons there in Buffalo, especially when he leads the team in many games in rushing for the Buffalo Bills. The guy's a stallion. So Jedi says, I wish they would just do it so we can assess the damage. Oh, right. So we could, yeah, no, it's going to be expensive for sure. But the good news is that Nick's cap number for this season is likely to come down quite a bit. So it should free up quite a bit of money this season at the very least. So we'll see how that goes. Jeff Williams says, I want to challenge Steph to a cat licking contest with a K. I don't know.
Don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means. It seems a little off. Anyway, let's keep it civil here, folks. James Dernall coming to us from the UK saying, hey guys, welcome James. Thanks for joining. He's been great with a lot of great comments. Cheerio. There we go. Stovey King says, I'll hold out until week 1. Oh man, that would be, people would start to panic. I think When do you think people are going to start to panic? So, because people are pretty calm so far. I saw somebody was panicking. Oh, it was Shasky this morning or today had a tweet like, "Is anybody panicking? I am," But
Yeah,
Shasky's pretty
we're in the
emotional. So.
preseason games already, so I think it's fair for people to start worrying about it. I mean, I'm not. I know a lot of people that aren't worried. I know some people that are. Nick Bosa's never participated in a preseason game since he's been in the NFL anyway, so that's why I'm not worried about him not being out there right now. The only thing, like, I think it's fair to worry about, it's not about the deal getting done. It's about when he's back out there. How long is it going to take for him to get into football shape? I know, like, the conditioning and the work that he does in the off season is obviously top notch and one of the best in the league, probably, but still, it's a little different when you're actually playing games and that type of conditioning. So, how long will it take for him to get into that shape? We'll find out. I got to imagine for Nick Bosa, it's probably a very short amount of time that he would need.
There you go. Yeah, yeah. I think a couple weeks is about all you probably need. He does a good job. So, I mean, hopefully by the last preseason game. But like you said, he's not going to play in that anyway. But just those practices plus the practices after the preseason game, give him about 3 weeks to ramp up. I think just to be safe would make some sense. Randy Tono says trade him and get Ngakoue and somebody else, but Ngakoue is already a Bear, and JPP. Yeah, JPP, but those guys are, those are just guys. Bosa is the man. So they're going to have to roll that cap over to pay Ayuk. Yeah, Ayuk's going to get a big deal. He deserves it. That could be part of the reason why we were trying to keep him under wraps, was to keep the deal a little bit less. But do you think we get that done this season, or I guess it'll be next year before the 5th-year option?
Yeah, I think more than likely next year. I think they've had their plate full with Nick Bosa this entire offseason. And while we have seen deals get done in the middle of the year. I mean, we saw Dre Greenlaw deal get done and I think like week 2. But I still think for a deal as big as what I would imagine Ayuk is probably going to push for as well, it's probably better to let that happen in the offseason.
Yeah, I agree. So, hey, real quick, everybody, please like and subscribe. If you're on Steph's channel, pop over to TED Talks Ball. If you're on TED Talks Ball, make sure you hit up 49 Carats. Also, if you're on a browser, like, just open up a second tab. You can watch us both at the same time, both channels. Even if you're on a phone, you can't split it. You can always, if you have a tablet, watch on 2 devices. It really helps. So, everybody, please do that. And I'll try and show all the chats so that if you're in one channel, you're not going to miss out on the chats from the other one. I'll show them at least briefly if I don't. You have a chance to react to it as well, which I try to do. But let's see what we got here. Jedi, which one of the 11 of us? All right, yeah, I'm out of that conversation. She said, I'm panicking overreaction Monday. Brock threw a bunch of ints at Raiders camp. Trade didn't look good, and all these big contracts have evaporated our depth. Yeah, there's some parallels to this squad that we have now, and sort of the Rams, what they were looking like the last couple of years before they won the Super Bowl. I was always getting on them for being top heavy, saying an injury here or there would wipe them out, because back then the Niners had lots of mid-level guys. But a perfect example of one that we just lost is Jimmy Ward. Like he's not a top paid safety, but he's like 6-7 mil. That's a perfect example of somebody that we used to have. But the bottom line is we have so many stars, James. You won't be missing those playing guys if all the superstars stay healthy. Then like I said, most of the defense was gone. All our weapons, all our whole starting O line. The team will look a lot different. I don't think you'll be so worried about it. It's preseason.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not worried about it. I mean, it is clear that maybe the depth on this team isn't what it used to be, but at the same time, if we're basing that just on the preseason game, maybe we need a little bit of a bigger sample size to really know. I made the joke on my Twitter that, yeah, if the 49ers had to start their entire second offensive line unit, they'd be in trouble. The reality is that's never going to happen. So that was the joke. So most of these guys are going to come in on spot duty. And I think as a whole, when guys are coming in on spot duty, you're not going to notice them if they are not as good, because there's so much talent on this 49ers team, and guys that could probably mask some of the uh, disadvantages that maybe some of these depth guys have, right? So I think they would be able to elevate some of those players. But of course, you have a bunch of second string players playing next to each other at the same time. More often than not, it's going to look bad. So I think that's why I'm not worried about it. Usually, when these guys go in relief of one of the starters, it ends up being okay. So,
Yeah. The only things I'm worried about are right tackle, defensive end across from Bosa, which is I'm less worried seeing Drake Jackson and Cleveland Farrell. I feel like we're in pretty good hands there. And nickel corner, because Jimmy Ward, I was a big Jimmy Ward fan. And especially like look at last season. He came in, he had the club on his hand. As soon as he had it off, he's got like 3 interceptions in less than half a season. 2 of them were off Armstead pressures, which is like, people get on Armstead because he didn't have any sacks. I'm like, I'd rather have 2 pressures for picks than probably 4 or 5 sacks, 6 sacks. So not that it's, you can just trade them like that, but in my mind, interceptions are huge because there's no punt. You got it back, and maybe you can get a return. Great one said, shaking my head, you wasn't supposed to post that, Ted. I'm not sure what I wasn't supposed to post, but if you could clarify, a great one, I'd be curious to know what I did. Like I said, I definitely post some things that get people riled up a little bit. But people are like, "Oh my God, you're such a great troll." I'm like, "Dude, this is my opinion, man. Like, this is not trolling." I did one troll post or a clickbait post where there was like this, that Dove Kleiman guy had a tweet about an Iowa State gambling scandal, and one of the guys' name was like Ishmael Brock, and so I said Brock, accused of gambling at Iowa State. And it's like true, but I knew when I was posting it, like everybody's gonna think I meant Brock Purdy, not Ishmael Brock. But I quote tweeted the tweet, so if you looked in it, you could see what it really meant. And everybody's like, "Well, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that?" I'm like, "Well, like I get accused of clickbait so often. I was like, I thought I'd just try it for once, and people are calling me a Lance stan so often. I'm like, maybe I'll start doing that too. So careful what you wish for, people. Like if you accuse me of stuff long enough, I'll be like, might as well do it. That's what everybody's saying, right? I mean, not exactly. That's kind of a cop out. But there's some truth to that. Like if people are just going to never give you credit for what you're doing, then or put words in your mouth, then finally I may actually do it and show them what it really feels like when I do it, because it's a lot different feeling, folks, than the stuff that I put out there. Because I pretty much take pride in not being clickbait, always having this, similar arguments. I barely ever flip flop. Jimmy was the big example. Other than that, I'm pretty damn steady Eddie Teddy on what I, talk about, posts, and all that kind of stuff. But enough about me. Let's see here. Somebody just said I subbed to Steph. Thanks, Randy. Appreciate that. You're a champ. See, James said the mug looking. Oh, sorry, that was a that was a Watson thing. Never say never. Didn't think we would need 5 QBs. Yeah, the problem is once you have so many QBs, there's only so many practice reps. You could have a really great 5th string QB, and if they're not getting the reps in practice, they're going to come in and look not too much better than Josh Johnson, to be honest with you. I think that was the problem.
I disagree with that sentiment because, Brock Purdy wasn't getting any reps. He didn't even get reps the week that he filled in for.
Well, he got scout team reps.
But what are those? Like, that's not really practicing for the actual, game.
It's not our system, but it's like kind of sampling of all the systems in the NFL. I don't know. I mean, it's reps at least. It's like, you're right though. As far Purdy, I think the main thing with him was just that he had the 48 starts in college, and do
I think it benefits guys to get reps? Yeah, like absolutely. But not everyone needs them in order to go in a game and do well.
Well, and then I saw Josh Johnson play for the Ravens, and he led him down the field and scored a touchdown against the Eagles.
He's not a bad quarterback, like
in preseason. But not granted, that's the Eagles' second, third stringers.
The Eagles' defensive line was just they were getting after the quarterback, and he couldn't do anything with that. And then he got hurt. So yeah.
Okay. All right. So Great One said the cat comment I wasn't supposed to post. Oh, I see. I wasn't supposed to put it up. Got it. Okay. Yeah. Well, sometimes I put them up and start reading them as they're up there. That's probably a mistake. Ted is a dad. He don't know, Great One. uh, yeah.
Hey, Ted,
I wasn't always a dad though.
hey Ted, we
Yeah.
were just talking about Bosa. I saw, I guess Matt Mayoko said, I don't know when he said this, but I just saw a screenshot of
Yeah.
Matt Mayoko saying this. 49ers are confident they can get Nick Bosa in the next week to 10 days. So
There we go. So just like we were saying, just in
good
time for the
sign.
last preseason game, exactly what we were saying when we would start to
That's
freak
perfect.
out.
That's
Yeah,
perfect because then
that's perfect.
he can at least practice with the team leading up to potentially the third preseason game at the very least before week 1. So that's
And also
what I
not
hope for.
practice against O linemen that are desperate, that would do kind of anything to make the team. I think there's a danger to practicing with the 90-man roster that isn't as great with the 53-man roster. Once things are more set, you're not like worried about getting cut, or at least not as worried about getting cut. So yeah, that's great update, Steph. Thanks for keeping us abreast of current events. I'm terrible at that once I'm in a show. James says, when you look at how healthy we've been in the past and how physical we play, I'm not hopeful for a few stand-ins to take the workload. We might win the decision, but I'm not expecting a 1 seed. I mean, it really just comes down to like QB, right tackle, the end, and nickel for me. All the rest, I'm rock solid on all the rest of our team. Maybe running back depth behind CMC because I don't trust Elijah Mitchell. Mason's still largely unproven, and TDP has been largely proven not to be good. Although he looked great in camp and did okay in the preseason game, other than the pass blocking. Randy says, "Don't get Ted riled up, folks. Trust me, you don't want that smoke." It's definitely, it takes. You got to kind of try to do it. I'm pretty mild mannered normally. Ryan from No Border Sports on. He was on this morning. Welcome, Ryan. He's been so helpful to me. He taught me so many tips and tricks with thumbnails and titles, and it's really paid dividends. So thanks again, Ryan, for all your help. Thanks for being on today. Appreciate it. James says, is Brock pushing himself to be back up before he should be? Another midday at camp? Are we expecting to see the same guy week 1? It's a concern. I mean, with any player, like a lot of times when there's an injury, you got to like keep them from hurting themselves, from coming back too soon, because a lot of times they want to come back before the doctor or the trainer or whoever coach thinks they're ready.
I think Brock has done a good job of, setting the expectation not too high for not just himself, but everyone else. And I imagine the team as well, as in terms of like when he would come back. And I think it just so happened that he cleared all the markers that he needed to, ahead of schedule. I don't think he was necessarily pushing himself to do that. I think, as he said, he was taking it day by day. And so I think the 49ers probably lucked out, as did, Brock Purdy, that he has been available, that he's been able to participate in training camp. I mean, also another point to say that they haven't been pushing him too hard, or he hasn't pushing himself too hard, is the fact that they were doing the 2-day on, 1-day off, right?
Right.
If they were pushing him too hard, they would have just been like, he's ready, he's cleared, let's give him all the practices, right? But instead, I think they were wanting to be careful with him throughout that 2 on, 1 off day, and that portion where he was doing that. Was there any setback? Otherwise, we would have heard about it and they would have reeled that back a little bit. But now we hear that he's good to practice 3 days in a row now. So I think it's just him, checking all the markers at this point in his recovery. So sometimes that's just how it goes. I understand. I think the worry of Brock potentially coming back too soon, or that he won't be the same guy. I mean, that's a concern anytime a player is coming back from injury. I think based on what I've seen from camp, I don't think any of his misses, or any of the misses that I saw in camp, had to do with the surgery. I think his arm is fine. I mean, he always had a limitation with his arm even before this surgery, right? If we're being completely honest. And yet he did what he did in those games last year, right? So I think we'll probably see the same guy. If there's any reason that we don't, I don't think it'll be because of the elbow, honestly. I think it'll be because now teams have tape on Brock and there might be some regression with him, but like I said, I don't think that will be because of his elbow. It's just going to be he has more experience in the NFL. Defenses have more experience going up against him, right? So I think that's why we might see a regression, not because of the elbow necessarily.
There you go. There you go. And we talked about like disappointments from camp in the preseason game. You know, I mean, I was disappointed with Trey Lance. I felt like we saw a much better version of him in camp than what we saw, and I explained some of it away by the lack of run game and the pressure and the Raiders game planning and really going all out. I would say the weapons didn't separate as well as our top weapons would too. But I mean, if I'm being honest, there was also some stuff that concerned me as far as hesitancy, open guys that weren't targeted, bad decisions by Trey. There were some bad play calls by Kyle too, but did you feel like there was a big difference between what you saw in camp and what you saw Sunday with Trey?
Yeah, like I kind of did, and I think I'm with you. Like I was disappointed too, but I feel like it was because I did expect more from Lance, and I expected to see maybe a little bit more of what we had seen in camp. I agree with you. I think there was some hesitancy. I think he didn't look comfortable. It took him maybe until the second quarter to get comfortable, and then he started hitting some of those throws and letting it rip. But that first quarter was kind of rough. I will say after watching it back, it wasn't as bad as was like how I felt watching it live. But even so, I think, Kyle Shanahan had things built in there. Some guys that did get open that he could have hit, didn't, ended up being a misfire, misthrow elsewhere, or like we saw a couple times, a sack. I mean, couple of those you could blame on him, couple of those you could blame on the offensive line. So it goes both ways, but I think all in all, like I probably maybe expected too much. I mean, we got to remember this is a guy coming back from an injury as well, and he doesn't have a lot of game experience. So he's probably going to look rough more often than he doesn't right now. And so that's I think the concern, but I think we saw it. The more reps he got, the more comfortable he got. At some point, you want that to change. But with that being the
real
case,
quick, that's something that we saw in camp too, right? I mean, we saw that he was slow starting,
yep.
and as he got more reps, he fired up
Even
towards the end of almost every practice.
even last year,
Yeah,
So that's why I'm like, I kind of want that to change at some point. Like
yeah,
I don't know if we can just accept that about him, and
no,
that's my concern with him because if he's going to be the backup on this team, that's not the quality of a good backup. If Brock Purdy misses a few snaps because he needs to get something looked at, Trey Lance has to come in. He needs to be, he needs to be on it, and he need from this first snap that he gets, he needs to be on it, not a quarter later, right? So I think that's probably an issue that I would like to see better in these next two preseason games, as well as the decision making. And like Kyle Shanahan has been saying, letting it rip. He needs to do that. And I think Kyle Shanahan has made it clear. He said he's made it clear to Trey Lance what he wants to see out of him in these next preseason games. So hopefully Trey Lance does heed that advice, and hopefully it looks better in these next couple of games because his time is running out, I fear.
yeah. I worry about it too. I just don't want him to go to another team and hit that ceiling somewhere else. It would be, it might be the end of my Shanna fandom. Um, Brian Culp in the house. He has a great podcast. Everybody check him out. He says smash the like button. He's also a big Jake Moody fan. Maybe that's a good time to talk about because I've been saying like Kyle, I am a Shanna fan. Kyle is a genius, but I'm starting to see a real blind spot for quarterbacks, and I was saying third round running back, so I'm just going to say all third round picks other than Fred Warner. And, I'm still, obviously, I'm not writing off Jake Moody or Latu yet, but obviously it didn't look good on Sunday. So,
Yeah, I mean, sometimes some of these guys do need time, and I think with Latu, that's certainly, I think he was more so a pick for the long term than any immediate contributor. Uh, but Ty Davis Price was also a third round pick, right? And he looks like
Trey Sermon.
he looks like he's gonna be way better this year.
Wasn't
Um,
Pettis a third? Was he a second? Pettis was a second round pick, wasn't he?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
yeah, I know Ty Davis Price did draw those parallels to Trey Sermon last year, his rookie year. Maybe it was a little unfair. Like sometimes we just need to give some of these guys some time to at least a year. Let's give them to show if they can turn a corner, if they can improve. TDP looks like a guy who's poised to improve. And I wouldn't be surprised if he eats away at Elijah Mitchell's RB2 snaps this year.
There you go. James is asking, how's Huff looking coverage? Now he's settled down. Is he playing way too aggressive? Well, apparently, according to Grant yesterday, I think he was saying that Huff had 3 pick sixes and Gibson had 4, or vice versa. Huff had 4 pick sixes and Gibson had 3. So the safeties are eating Brock Purdy alive with the pick sixes in camp. But we obviously didn't see him on Sunday. I feel like Huff's looked pretty good. What did you think from camp?
Yeah, I mean, Huff was one of the better players in all of
Yeah,
camp as well. I mean,
Huff and Fred.
my bad for not
Kinlaw.
mentioning him, at the top of the episode when you asked me about camp. I mean, he was definitely one of those guys who I think with each year he's going to continue to get better. And let's not forget the impact that Steve Wilkes is about to have on the secondary, right? I think Hufanga is one of those guys who's going to benefit from having that extra guidance. And hopefully with that, we don't see him take so many, the over aggressiveness and make the wrong read, like we saw at times last season and in his rookie year. So I think we'll probably see that improve a little bit this year, but I think we see the aggressiveness. I think that is one good thing about Huff, but it's the over aggressiveness that it's like, sometimes he overshoots things, takes a bad angle at something, so I think those little things will probably improve, but I think we're still going to get an aggressive Hufanga. We'll see him plenty in blitzes, I'm sure. And I'm excited. I'm excited for another year of Huff in this defense. They're going to be swarming for sure.
Can't wait. Ryan from the Board Sports said Trey needs to trust the system and receiver more to be successful. Yeah, Ryan had a great take in our show this morning. He said basically Trey needs to stop worrying about throwing interceptions because Purdy's definitely throwing them. And just trust that if you throw a ball up and it gets intercepted, it's more on Kyle's system and the design of the play than on you being a bad quarterback. And quit worrying about it because obviously Kyle said he liked that he threw the near interception touchdown. He liked that he went for it. So hopefully Trey heard that and it really sinks in because I thought that was a brilliant take by Ryan today. Like that it's not your fault, son. It's, it's more Kyle if you want to blame anyone. I know also we are running short on time. We're a little bit over. I know you have an appointment you need to get to. So just let me know when you want to cut off or if you're ready to do so now. We can say goodbye.
Yeah, if you got one more topic, one more question, we could probably knock it out really quick. But yeah,
yep. Let's just see what
have to get going to a dentist appointment.
Yeah, always fun. Sorry, that's terrible. I hate the dentist. I mean, most people do, especially as you get older. I feel that the trap of Trey hate on Monday, thinking this is really it after 3 years, kind of wised up back on Tuesday. But when do we start placing the blame on Kyle for one bad decision after another? I mean, I already am. I've been saying, passed on Mahomes for Cousins, didn't get Cousins, passed on Brady to keep Jimmy, didn't get Stafford, had, gave Jimmy the biggest QB contract in NFL history, had Brock QB3 to start last season. And if you believe he was not our third best QB, then I don't think he should have been QB3 to start the season. I think he should have got some first. Here's the parallel for me, right? Like all these people are like, oh, it's fine that Lance isn't getting first team reps this season. I'm like, well, Brock didn't get first team reps last season, so he was unable to prove that he was better than and he may not have been. He may have improved during the season doing those scout team reps, but we don't know because there's no baseline, right? Because Kyle never gave him first team reps. And so now they're saying, oh, it's fine for Lance. And I'm just like, what if Jimmy G never got injured? What if Jimmy G never got injured last year? We would not even know what we have in Brock Purdy at this point. We would have no clue other than from practice.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It seemed like the 49ers, or at least Kyle Shanahan, had some inkling because he did like what he saw out of Purdy in camp last year. Uh, but yeah, I mean, if Jimmy Garoppolo hadn't gotten hurt, we'd probably have Trey Lance and Brock Purdy, battling for some reps, right? So, but I don't know. It's I feel bad for Lance, but he has to make do with the opportunities that he does get, and whether it's fair or not, like, this is just the situation that he's in, and it sucks big time for him. But he has to make the most of those opportunities. I'll just say that.
When you say situation, I say Snooki. Anyway, I'm just kidding. So, Steph, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate you being here and supporting my channel. Let me know if there's ever anything I can do to help pay you back. It was great meeting you at camp. Always great doing shows. I hope your dentist visit is as non-invasive as possible and as cheap as possible. They can also be rather
just a cleaning. So
okay, I was gonna say, if they're not painful on the mouth, sometimes they can be painful on the pocketbook too. So hoping the best of both for you. And I'll just say peace and go Niners.